I am trying to win $100 an hour at 5-5. I know it's been a while since you played low stakes, but do you think it is at all possible?
No, I don't think it's possible long term.
Let's rewind a second. That's me, Marc Goone, and I'm going back to low stakes to prove to our students and Mariano that $100 an hour is possible at 5-5. In this episode, I play 2 wild sessions at Hustler. Wild like the hands. No one was kissing at the table or anything like that. And I try to keep the run good going. Can I stay on track to prove Mariano wrong? Let's find out.
Down bad, bounce back, boy, I'm different. Watch how I handle my business. Watch with the hands not ticking. Listen, that's that drum kick, boom, coming out of my system.
All right, jumping into the first session of the week here, we're playing 5-5, EP, and the low jack limp. I look down at queen jack off in the cutoff, going to ISO raise to 40 here. I'm going to keep ISO raising these hands until I get sufficiently punished, and spoiler alert, I may get sufficiently punished right here. Flop comes 5-9 ace with a couple of clubs. Don't really have anything going on multi-way. Not really a fan of c-betting ace high boards. Even heads up with my entire range in position. So I'm going to check this one back. The turn is a 7 of clubs. EP checks, and now low jack comes out and bets 40 for 1/3 pot here. We've got the queen of clubs. We've got a bunch of options to try to take this away on the river. I'm pretty certain he doesn't have a flush when he takes this size. We're gonna call here and try to take it away. Of course, we can just hit our hand on the river as well, but we do not hit our hand. The river is an ace, and now he checks. And at this point, I just think he's got a lot of hands that maybe monkey bet the turn, like 9x. Maybe he could have a weak ace here sometimes, but I do think that hand would just bet small. So I think we're just not going to really run into a brick wall here all that often. Like I said, I think the flushes would bet bigger on the turn. And after the low jack checks, he's got about 450 behind. So I jam for 450. He snap calls and he shows 7-7 for a full house. So I was right about him not having the flush, but he got a little bit trappy on the river and shows, what do I know? Not very much at all, apparently. And I get punished in the first hand of the session. All right, next hand here, double board PLO bomb pot. I've said it before, I'll say it again. If you are a player who is playing for profit and you are not playing these double board PLO bomb pots, you are not a player who is playing for profit. Just massive, massive punts being made in these games. You don't even have to know much. So we've got king 4, 10-3 with a couple of diamonds here and $200 in there. Flop number 1 comes 9-3 king with a couple of diamonds. So we've got 2 pair and a 4 high flush draw. Board number 2 comes 10-7 ace with a couple of diamonds. So we've got second pair and a 4 high flush draw. So not the best flush draw, obviously, on either board, but we do have something else going along with it. So we are going to check, as is my MO from early position here in these bomb pots, just checking everything to see what happens behind us. And MP goes 45, which is really, really small, folds around to the button who is going to call. We are going to come along and call as well. This hand just not good enough to raise. We're not really drawing to the nuts on either board. Turn is a 9 on top. We don't like that. Now our 2 pair is counterfeit and a 4 on bottom, but now we do have 2 pair on bottom and top pair on the top board. I mean, we've got something going on each board, but not the best hand on either one. The MP player to our left goes small once again. He goes 115. The button calls again and getting a pretty good price here. We don't love it, but we're going to call once again. If he just potted here, we probably just get out of the way. Now the rivers are pretty good for us. On the top board is a 3, so now we have a full house with king 3 up top, and the bottom board is a king 10. We're playing on the bottom board now, so we've got a pretty strong hand here on both boards, a full house and 2 pair. At this point, we think we have the best hand on at least one of these boards. So we're just gonna lead out here for pot. If we get 2 calls, well, we're probably good on one of these boards and we're going to chop up one of their money. And if both of them fold and we just take the pot, that's also good for us as well. So we're just gonna donk for 675 here. MP is going to call and the button is going to fold. So MP shows ace deuce 9-5. So he just has trips up top and a pair of aces down below. So we're actually going to scoop here. And you see here, he's a little bit confused.
I got 9's full.
You gotta play 2 cards.
No, but does this win?
All right, next hand here, the $10 straddle is on. We go 40 on the button with king 9 off, and the straddle is going to call. Flop comes
Deuce 10 for rainbow. He checks it over. My MO, single raise pot in position. Choose the size where they raise off their strong shit, call with their weak shit, usually around half pot. So I go $45 and he is going to call. Turn now is a king of hearts. So now we've got top pair. We want to make sure hands like 10x stick around. Maybe a hand like pocket nines, maybe a hand like ace 4 suited, ace 3, something like that. We want to make sure all this stuff sticks around. So we can't go really big here because what hand did they put us on every time we raise pre-flop and then c-bet on the flop? They just always think we have ace king. So got to go relatively small here to target all of those hands. So I go $60 and he puts in the call. Planning to go for 3 streets here, pretty small on most rivers, but now the river is an ace. Don't really love this river for value. Still think we're good a lot of the time, but of course we're probably just not going to get value from a hand like 10 jack or pocket nines here on this river ever. And he does have some ace x, some 2 pair, some ace 5, some ace 3. So we just check this back and we are good against jack 10. Next hand, got at least a couple of these every session. My favorite line in all of live poker. If you've watched this channel, you know what is about to come. 5-5, the straddle's on, so we're playing 5-5-10. We go 40 on the button with 10-8 offsuit with 3 passive recreational players in the blinds here. The small blind is going to call. Flop comes 7-8 jack, so we flop middle pair. MO heads up in position, single raise pots. Just go about half pot. He checks it over. We go 50. He calls. Turn is now in offsuit 3. We've got showdown value. No real reason to keep barreling here. We want to funnel them into the most profitable line in all of live poker. And if you've watched the videos, you know what's coming. We check it back. River is a 3. He goes 75 into 190. We snap it off and he mucks. And this line is undefeated. The c-bet flop, check back turn with showdown value, bluff catch river to anything under 2/3 pot. It works every time. All right, next hand here. This is a weird one, but it did give us a nice little piece of information on a player in this hand who we play a lot of hands against in this pool. So let's see if we can use this in the future. We go 25 here in the hijack with red pocket jacks. The straddle is off. The cutoff, who is going to be the main villain in this hand, and the small blind call. So we're going 3 ways. Flop comes 7 deuce 3. And if it would check over to us, I'd probably just be betting this flop, expecting it to get checked through a lot with only 1 player in position behind us. But the small blind is actually going to donk 50, which is a pretty large size here. Usually when people donk multi-way, going to be a much different composition of hands than hands that donk heads up. This is going to be vulnerable, but pretty good hands. So we're going to proceed here rather cautiously. He's going to give us a lot more information on the turn. We're just going to call. I could see a raise here being okay as well, just targeting hands like ace 7, pocket nines, whatever. But now the cutoff is going to put in a raise to 200 behind us. And the small blind now is going to fold. So he is a little bit more trappy with his kind of nutted hand. So I would not be surprised to see him flat with a hand like 7s, deuces, or 3s here at some frequency. So we're going to call. We're going to see what he does on the turn. Maybe he could be bluffing here. Maybe he could be overvaluing a hand. The turn is a queen. We check it over. He quickly checks back. Now we think we have the best hand all the time here. And now the river is a jack of spades. And here's where I think I made a little bit of a blunder in his hand. After he checks back the turn, I'm just like, okay, he doesn't have much. Let's maybe check this river and give him a little bit of rope and allow him to bluff. But if he was going to bluff, he would just keep bluffing on the turn. I already said that this player is passive. He's probably not just raising like a multi-way donk with some type of draw here on the flop. So you see he quickly checks back the river. Obviously we're good with jacks. When this player raises the flop, he just doesn't really have sets because he likes to trap those. So what hand does he like to raise here? Probably not a lot of bluffs. He's just doing this for protection with hands like ace 7, pocket nines, pocket 10s, stuff like that. So I think when this player starts raising flops, we either need to start putting in a lot of 3 bets if we think he's going to call quite a bit, or we need to just start donking turns, just expecting him to check back. I have ISO raised quite a bit, and it has limped to me in the blinds the last couple times, and I have raised to 90 or 100 or something like that, and everybody's just folded. So now this time it is going to limp to me in the middle blind. Again, the hijack, cutoff, button, and small blind are going to limp. And we look down at ace king. I make it 90. And again, this is probably the 3rd time I've done this in the last, 20, 30 minutes. And now the hijack is going to limp re-raise to 330. And it folds back around to me. He's only got about 900 effective here, and I just think he's probably just had enough of my shit. If I had a hand like aces or kings here, I may flat. But with ace king, I don't mind just folding out a lot of his bullshit when he puts in a third of his stack here if he's going to make a mistake and start making some folds. So I am just actually going to move in here for 900 effective, and that's when he starts talking.
You can't fold kings.
You want to see it? You want to see how it gets folded?
Do what you want.
No way in 6 million years he ever had kings here. Was just trying to save face, but we are happy to take down the 300 and some odd dollars. All right, next hand here. We are in the straddle this time. This player is going to limp in the cutoff, and the middle blind is going to complete and limp as well. We look down at King Jack, and just because of the meta developing here, I wouldn't always ISO this hand closing the action. I would be doing a lot of checking, especially against like an early position limp. But when the cutoff limps here, I just think this is never going to be a strong hand. He would just open up a lot of his strong hands. I've played a lot of hours with this player. So we've got a meta here. We feel like we are viewed as full of shit here quite a lot. We are going to go to 90, and the cutoff is going to call. Middle blind gets out of the way. Flop comes 6, 5, 8 with a couple of diamonds. My MO, single raise pots out of position. I'm just going to check my entire range because live players in general overstab, telegraph their bet strength with their sizing, and do not protect their check back range. So we check, and he checks it back. Turn is now a jack, pretty good, giving us top pair here. I think when he checks back flop, he's got either air or showdown value. His air is going to fold if we breathe on the pot. His showdown value, however, is not going to fold here. And a lot of times I would check here and let a player stab with their showdown value, but this player is a little bit more on the passive side. So I'm actually just gonna come out and bet myself. Small overbet here. I go 200. Actually, I think we could probably just go 300 here. He is going to put in the call. River is a 10 of diamonds, so the front door flush does come in. Not necessarily all that worried about him having a lot of flushes here, but it's just a little bit harder to get paid here on this river from hands like pocket sevens or hands like ace 6 or something like that. So I'm still going to go for value, but I'm going to size down here just a little bit. I think on a blank river, like an offsuit deuce or something like that, I would just overbet here, expecting him to never fold a hand like sevens or ace 6. We're gonna go 300 on this river, just targeting those type of hands, and he is going to snap call. So probably could have gone a little bit bigger here, and we are good with King Jack. So getting some nice value, but probably could have got a little bit more. All right, next hand here, we are in the middle blind. The $10 straddle is on, and the hijack is going to limp here. The same familiar villain you see there at the top of the screen, who we've played quite a few pots with so far. Now the small blind is going to come along and limp as well. And we look down at pocket kings. What a spot for us here in the middle blind. We make it 80. I went a little bit smaller here just to ensure we got a couple of calls. I think I should probably just go bigger because of our image at this point, because of the meta going on, because we keep ISOing to huge sizes from the blinds. So I think I screwed this up a little. Probably could just go 100 here, leaving money on the table with this size. But both players are going to call, and look at that sweet baby there. Flop comes king 5 jack, so we flop top set. Checks over to us. I think this is close between checking and betting, and if this was a heads up pot out of position, would always be checking, but with one player behind us, I think we could probably just start betting, specifically when that player behind us is passive. I like just going small here on this flop, but I like to check. It checks through. Turn is a queen of diamonds, bringing in a backdoor flush draw. And now the small blind is going to lead out for 200. He's not messing around. He's got a good hand here. And I think raising would have merit if he was deep, but he's only got about 400 behind after he puts in 200. And we would absolutely love for the hijack to get involved as well. So we just call, but the hijack folds, gets out of the way. Now the river is a queen of clubs, giving us top boat here. And now he checks. He's only got about 400 behind, and we thought he was pretty strong on the turn, so we are just going to put the money in, and now he starts talking.
Oh, all you have is a king? Yeah. What do you think, I'm bluffing? If I were you, I would call me, but I don't think you should call me. That's my advice.
So I don't know if we talked him into it or what, but it was fun. He puts in the call, and we are going to scoop a nice pot here against king 9 of diamonds with top boat. He's got the case king, and we win a nice little pot with a full house.
All right, we're here with the biggest sweetie in the poker universe, Mariano. I am trying to win $100 an hour at 5-5. I know it's been a while since you played low stakes, but do you think it is at all possible?
I don't know if it's possible, especially with, you know, the dreaded rake and all that. but I'm wishing you the best of luck.
I want to answer. You could say no. You could say absolutely not. I want you to commit.
No, I don't think it's possible long term.
What do you think the highest possible win rate in a softer, like low stakes game like 5-5 with a $7 or $8 drop is?
Obviously, if the straddle's on all the time, it kind of changes things, but assuming it's not, 10 bigs is pretty amazing.
All right, you heard it here. Thanks, man. Appreciate it.
Yeah, you got it.
All right, next hand here, 5-5-10, the straddle's on. We open up to 40 in the cutoff with 10-9 of spades. Villain is going to call in the straddle here. He has just reloaded, and flop comes pretty good for us. 5, queen, 8 with a couple of spades, so we flop a combo draw here. He checks it over, heads up in position, usually about half pot. We go 40, he is going to call. Turn is the 4 of spades, and on these flush completing turns, I like to go small because our opponents are uncapped. It allows them to raise off some of their hands like flushes and allows them to continue with kind of a wider, weaker range. He is going to put in the call. Now the river is a 9 of hearts, and once he calls a small bet on the turn, I know he doesn't really have any flushes and got the best hand here at 99.6% frequency. When he checks over on the river here, I think he can have a lot of 2 pair, maybe some queen 9, maybe some 4-5, maybe some straights. So I do think he can have a lot of strong hands on the river, and if I was bluffing, I would probably choose either like a pot size here or a little bit smaller than pot just to try to get queen X to fold, or I would go absolutely massive on this river to try to get the 2 pair and the straights to fold, maybe like 650 or 700. So I think on this river for value, targeting the 2 pair, targeting the straights, I can actually go for a pretty big size. So I go 400. He is going to tank and tank and tank and finally find the fold. All right, next hand, the low jack is going to limp. The hijack limps. Pretty good spot for us. We look down at pocket queens, the straddle's on, we make it 60 bucks. Both limpers call. Flop comes jack 5-3 with a couple of spades, checks over to us, and multi-way here, going to choose a little bit of a smaller size because I still want to entice them to call with their weak shit and raise off their strong shit. So I go 75, and both players are going to call. Going to a turn, which is a 6 of hearts, and when both players check it over to me at this point, now there is a front door flush draw, a back door flush draw, a lot of straight draws as well. So the board's super draw heavy. I don't think Jack X is folding here for even a large size. I obviously don't think ace high flush draws or pair plus flush draws are folding here. So I like to go big here on this turn. We go 400. He immediately jams all in for 1.2K. You see we make the snap fold. The last time someone check raise bluffed a turn to a big size, George Washington Carver was president of the United States of America. Just a little interlude here. Watch Henry, one of the rags at Hustler, come over, pretend to come over to shake this guy's hand, and then knock all of our chips to the felt. Next hand here, we've played quite a lot of pots against this villain today, and here comes one of the big ones. We go 40 in the hijack with 7-5 of spades. The straddle is on. The small blind is going to call, and now the straddle is going to 3-bet to 170. We start this hand pretty deep. We're about 300 big blinds effective. We know this guy doesn't 3-bet much. He's closing the action here too, so he's probably just gonna have a range that looks something like jacks plus ace king, and with a very tight, narrow range. He essentially is just going to play face up post flop. So with a small kind of one gapper suited connector, I kind of like our odds this deep in position. We can make some things happen. So we are going to call. Thankfully, the small blind is going to get out of the way. We go heads up to the flop. Comes 4, deuce, 10. He checks it over, and I think this is close between betting and checking. If this guy has a hand like ace king, well, we really only need 1 or 2 barrels to get that hand to fold. And yeah, it would be great to just get that hand to call a couple times and then fold, but I don't think that is realistic. So I'm actually going to check this back. And then if he checks the turn, well, then I'm just going to put in a small barrel on the turn and the big bet on the river to get ace king to fold. The turn is a queen of spades, actually gives us a little bit of equity. He checks it over, and now I want to choose a size that ace king is going to call one time, make sure that hand sticks around, and then I can get that hand to fold on the river. So I go 200 here, and he is going to put in the call after not much deliberation. Now the river is a deuce of clubs, so fairly innocuous card, although it does pair bottom pair here. He checks it over. So let's just choose the size here on the river that folds out ace king all the time. We don't really need to go absolutely massive here. So he does have a trap here. We want to be careful. We don't want to go too big here, but we don't need to go that big here to get ace king to fold. So pot being 780, I go pot here. I bet 775, just ensuring that ace king is going to find the fold all the time here on the river. And he's going to tank actually for a pretty long time. He counts out calling chips, but then eventually he does find the fold, and we get it through with 7 high, and we rake in a nice little pot. All right, next hand here, straight 5-5. Under the gun opens to 20. Seems to be a trying recreational player, maybe playing for profit type. The low jack, hijack, button, and small blind are going to call. We look down at 6 deuce of spades, closing the action, getting a price. We are in there. Flop comes 6-7-4 rainbow. It checks through. Turn is now a deuce of hearts, and at this point, we're just gonna target some showdown value that players in the field can have. No one probably has a strong hand at this point, but we think someone could have a hand like 6x or 4x that is just gonna call for a big size one time no matter what. We go 125, and under the gun, the pre-flop razor calls, which is interesting because this probably just means he had some type of overpair, maybe to protect his check back range or whatever confused theory guys at low stakes do. Or maybe he watched Hungry Horse videos and he was just checking his entire range on the flop. Either way, when he calls next to act here, I think he's just got a ton of overpairs, so this is great for us. We are just probably gonna go huge on a lot of rivers, praying for a blank, but it is not a blank. It is an 8, so now it's a one-liner to a 5, and at this point, we're gonna have to go really, really small to get looked up by an overpair.
It's an interesting river because it makes it very hard to be bluffing.
So I actually bet 125. Now something strange happens. He actually makes it 325, and I am confused. I'm thoroughly confused because what hands would do this? He'd have to be turning something like an overpair into a bluff here to have any bluffs at all. I'm not sure how he could ever have a bluff in this situation. I mean, maybe he could be turning a hand like ace-6 into a bluff or ace-4 into a bluff. I just don't think that's a thing that happens ever at 5-5 here. So I am going to find the fold here, and he kindly shows pocket 8s. So we were right about him having an overpair, and he actually rivered a set and went for some super thin value. If I could take back one hand this entire session, it would be this one. Under the gun opens to $20. The same player from last hand. This is exactly one orbit later. The button and the small blind call. We are going to call on the big blind with 5-4 of diamonds. Flop comes 5-ace-10 with a couple of diamonds. So we flop bottom pair and a flush draw here. We check, and it actually checks through. Turn is a queen of spades. And at this point, we're going to check again. We've got a smidge, a tiny smidge of showdown value here. But if someone bets, particularly the pre-flop raiser, we can just check raise here and start applying a ton of pressure because we can have a lot of strong hands here. It looks very, very strong when we check raise here. So under the gun is actually going to go 50. The small blind is going to call. At this point, we know the small blind is capped. He checked the turn again and then didn't go for the check raise. So we're not worried about the small blind ever having a strong hand. Now, the under the gun player, could he have a hand like king jack sometimes here? Yes, but in my opinion, this is mostly going to be spade draws or weak ace X that checked on the flop. Remember the last hand, he checked back with an overpair on the flop. So I think this guy is protecting his check back range a little bit here on the flop as a pre-flop raiser. So we're going to put in the check raise here, size up to 300. We want to leave a big boy chunky overbet size on the river. We would love for him to call here with his flush draws and his ace X and then get that stuff to fold on the river. He is going to call. Now the river is the 7 of hearts, and I don't know why. I don't know why I did this, but I talked myself into on this river possibly having some showdown value here against his spade draws and maybe just bluff catching here on the river. And man, this is bad. This is a big blunder. I think I make a lot of tiny blunders. I don't make a ton of big blunders in my opinion, and this is a big, massive blunder. I think we just need to jam here. I think we get 90% of his range to fold on this river. All the ace X, I think, folds here. Even though both flush draws brick, I think we just get credit here. It looks so strong. I check. He quickly checks it back, and of course he shows ace deuce of spades, and he wins the pot. Would we get that hand to fold on the river? Yes. Yes, we would have. All right, next hand here against the exact same villain, 5-5. We open to 25 in the hijack with king 10 of hearts, and he's gonna 3-bet in the cutoff to 80 here. We know this player is trying. We know he's capable. He may be constructing, you know, a little bit of a wider 3-bet range than you typically see at 5-5. So we're gonna give him a little credit here, and we are going to continue with a suited Broadway when he 3-bets to 80. Flop comes king 9 with a couple of spades. We check it over. He goes $60 here, and against a fish who may not be capable of folding pocket aces or pocket queens or jacks or something like that, I would just always check raise here. But against a more thinking player, I think it looks very, very strong if we check raise this board. They're going to continue barreling with a lot of their semi-bluffs across turns and rivers, and they're also going to continue value betting thin quite a lot of the time if they do have a hand like aces or queens or jacks if the board runs out blank. So against a more capable player, I actually like just calling here, which is what we do. Turn is a 6 of spades, so the front door flush comes in. We don't love this card because it's just gonna make it harder for us to get value. We check it over, he checks back. Now the river is a 7 of diamonds, and at this point, it's time to go for some value. I think if he does have a hand like aces or queens here, he's going to be hard pressed to fold. And I think if I was bluffing here, I think if I did have a hand like jack 10 suited or queen 10 suited, I would have to go very, very big to get him to fold a hand like aces here. I'd probably be going like 400 or 450. So I think this is actually a pretty good spot to bet for value. And I'm actually going to choose an overbet size here, small overbet. I go 300 here, targeting aces or queens. It's going to have a hard time folding, specifically if he does have a spade to go along with it. I don't know why that matters, but people like having the spade in their hand. It makes them feel a little warm and fuzzy inside. So we go 300 here, and this is where I start talking once again.
Show me 1-5. There's 0-10. There's 0-10.
Eventually, he is going to make the call. He shows pocket aces, and we win a nice little pot. Big pot alert, the last hand of the session here. This one, I'm gonna shut up and let you guys just listen to the table talk throughout the hand.
How much you got over there?
About 8.5.
All right, we're gonna play for a little more.
Thanks. No, I don't like it.
Why?
I could be ready to go.
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
What's your middle name?
I don't have one.
You don't have a middle name? Why?
Did I ask my parents?
They just didn't give you a middle name? Is there a reason? You got a good hand, don't you? Yeah.
I've been playing my V-tips like maybe sub 20%.
Okay. 300.
Punish me.
Owen?
I only have one pair. And I can be honest with you because you're the one who's all in. I don't think I'm gonna put any more money in this pot. I don't think I am. I don't know, maybe I changed my mind. I call.
Oh, too bad.
Well, we need a river.
That thing.
I'm drunk.
So once again, I guess the theme of this session, just getting lucky, running good. We get there on the river and make a better 2-pair and scoop a nice little pot in the last significant hand of the evening.
I'm gonna be honest, guys, we sun ran a little bit tonight. Ran pretty good. Up about 3,000 and some change, played about 9 hours and some change, and we're on pace. So far in the challenge, played about 70 hours and up over 13K. So very small sample size, but a very strong start. So far, so good.
All right, jumping into the second session of the week here at Hustler, we are going to open to 40 with Jack 8 of hearts from under the gun. Probably a little bit too light, but I've been pushing it. I think there's a really big edge in these games, and we're just not getting 3-bet at any significant frequency. We just get to realize and we can navigate posts. The biggest problem is when like 3 or 4 players come in multi-way behind us, and then we're in just kind of a shit spot. And we are going to get called from the cutoff and the middle blind. So we're going 3 ways. Flop comes 7-6-5 with a couple of diamonds, and the middle blind checks over to us. And I want to mostly be checking here with just one player behind us in position. If he checks through, that's great. We can start applying a ton of pressure on the turn. We're going to get some clarity on the middle blind's range. And if he bets here, again, we're going to get clarity on the middle blind's range. He's going to telegraph his hand straight with the sizing. We can put in some check raises, but it does check through. We go to the turn. The middle blind checks again. The turn is an ace. And I just think here, the cutoff is going to have a lot of ace X when he checks back the flop. So we go for the check again, going for the big check raise here on the turn. But he's going to check it back. River is now a 9 9. So we actually make a straight here. Now big blind comes out and leads for 25. When he chooses a size, I just don't think he's gonna have a straight at a high frequency. If I was bluffing here, I would just go big all the time because I think we could just get the range fold. Like, sure, we'll run into an 8 occasionally, but if we just go 125, 150, something like that here, I think we just get all the 2 pair to fold. So I actually go really, really small here. The cutoff gets out of the way. The middle blind is gonna think it over for several seconds. He is going to put in the call of $55, and we squeak out a little bit of value on this here river. Here we go. Big pot alert. Straight 5-5 now, under the gun makes a 20, early position player calls, and we have pocket 7s in the low jack. As you know, I like to play a lot of 3-bet or folds, specifically when recreational players open, but I'm squeezing with good, better, or best. This hand doesn't fall into those categories, so I'm gonna break the rule and have a rare call here pre-flop. This is a hand that just plays okay multi-way. If we don't flop a set, we just get away from it. If we do flop a set, maybe we can get somebody's money. And we go to a flop, and what a flop it is, 9-7-4. We flop middle set, under the gun, and EP check. And now since we've got a couple players out of position to us and a couple players in position, I think this could go either way. But with 2 players in position to us here, I'm not sure how likely this flop is to get stabbed. Maybe if we had 3 or 4 players in position to us, I would just always check here, going for the check raise. But I'm just gonna start betting right now and piling in some money. We go 50 into 120, and now music to our ears. Cutoff makes it 150. It's gonna fold back around to us. When he does this next to act, I just think he always has a strong hand. Now, he could have a hand like pocket 4s here, which would be delightful, or he could occasionally have like some type of straight draw, some type of hand like ace-9, maybe pocket 10s or something like that. Maybe a hand like 9-7 suited. So we just don't think we have a ton of fold equity here. We would never bet 3-bet as a bluff because we don't think this guy's folding anything. So I am just going to go for the bet 3-bet here, just putting in a ton of money against a strong range that is never folding right now. So we are going to bet 3-bet to $400 here, leaving a little over 500 behind, which we assume we will always get on any turn. No real reason to put it all in here. And he is actually going to put it all in for us. He jams for 905. We snap call. The turn is a 6. We don't necessarily love to see it. Some straight draws get there like 10-8. And the river is a jack. So we lose to some stuff now, but we flip over our cards and we are good. And nice to scoop in a $1,900 and some change pot early on in the session. And not a big fan of flatting multi-way, but hey, this one worked out for us. Seems quite a few things have been going our way these last couple sessions. This hand made a pretty big blunder, so let's talk about it. The hijack limps, who is a familiar villain. We've played quite a few hands with this guy. Semi-passive, semi-trappy, semi-sticky. And we are going to isolate to $50 at the cutoff here with Jack 10 of hearts after he limps. The middle blind is going to call, and now the hijack is going to come along as well. We are about 800 effective with the hijack, so not all that deep. Flop comes 9 king 3 with 1 heart. So we flop a gutter here, and being in position, we've got a draw to the nuts. We've got a backdoor flush draw. So I would not be betting this out of position, but in position, I think it is okay. We go $60 into 160. The middle blind folds and the hijack calls. Now the turn is a deuce of hearts. He checks and we go 125 here. I hate this size. I hate it. In game, I was thinking, you know what? I need to leave enough behind on the river to get a king X to fold, to leave that big chunky overbet behind. But this guy's never folding a king on the river, right? If he has a hand like king jack or king 10 or even like king 8 suited or something, this guy is not the type of guy to fold for 80 big blinds top pair on the river. So I should just be going massive to incentivize him to call with all of his spade flush draws, with all of his 9x of spades, with all of his 3x of hearts or whatever, and then just bet very small on the river and get all of his flush draws or pair plus flush draws to fold. I think that's a much better plan here. So I really hate this turn sizing, but he is going to put in the call. Going to a river, which is a 4 of hearts. We back into the flush. He checks, and my plan here, I reach to bet 450, but I am actually getting a massage at the table at this point, and I grab the wrong denomination of chips and actually put in 350, which which is a huge disaster to bet 350 here on this river. Like, obviously, this guy's never folding a king. I even think 450 is a mistake here, let alone 350, because if I was bluffing in this spot, I would still never try to get this guy to fold a king on the river. So I think we should just be putting in all of the money here. And he does call the 350, of course, windmills his cards into the muck. This one gets me upset. You know, the bad beats, that stuff, whatever, it's out of my control. I don't really get upset over that stuff. When I play bad, even when I win a pot, it gets me upset. And after this hand, I go on a quick break because I'm extremely disappointed on both my turn sizing and my river sizing in this hand. We go outside to the parking lot, smoke a joint, get dialed back in, and promise to play much better and stay extremely focused for the rest of this session. Small blind buys the button here. Low jack makes it 30. Recreational player. We are going to ISO with pocket threes here. Play pot heads up in position against this guy. He is deeper now. At this point, he's got over 1,000. So we are going to try to get it heads up in position. We go small here with pocket threes, just trying to shut out the players behind us. But they are not going to cooperate because the cutoff is going to cold call. That's going to bring the low jack along as well. We're going three ways to the flop in a 3-bet pot with pocket threes. Oh boy, what have we done? Flop comes 9-8-6. Low jack checks. We're going to check it over. The cutoff goes to 85, which is relatively small. The low jack gets out of the way here, and we are going to peel one time. We think he could just be monkey stabbing quite a bit here on this flop. Could have some suited broadways that are stabbing, some suited ace X, some stuff like that is just kind of monkey stabbing when it checks to him in a 3-bet pot. We think we got a smidge of showdown value. If he would have just gone over 100 here, we would have just always folded. But in general, they have sizing tells, particularly on dynamic boards. So we're going to float one time. Turn is a king, and we check. And as expected, he's going to check this back. River is a deuce of hearts. And now I think what I may have done in the past here was just check this spot and expect it to get checked through. And sometimes our hand is good against ace jack or whatever that was just stabbing on the flop, or like queen 10 suited or something that was just stabbing on the flop. But I think that's a mistake because I think we can just win this hand 100% of the time. Once he checks back turn, once he uses a small size on the flop and then checks back turn, he just never has a strong hand, right? He never has a set. He never has 2 pair. The best hand this guy can ever have here, right, is maybe a weak king. Maybe a weak king. Like king jack or king 10 or something like that check back turn. If he did have 2 pair, he would always continue betting on the turn. And a lot of those king X hands may just bet the turn themselves. So we just think he's severely capped here. He's never going to be able to call a huge bet. It looks like we have a hand like ace king or pocket aces or something like that. So we go 620 into 385. Now, if I was value betting here, I would want to go relatively small to target hands like 9X or 8X or pocket 10s or something like that. That is just going to be pretty elastic on this river when a king comes, and they always put us on ace king. So because my value bets would want to go small here, my bluff just wants to go big. And you may be thinking, well, shouldn't you be balanced? No. These, I mean, against people who can't even spell balanced, why should I even consider it? This guy just never has a hand that can call. He is extremely capped, and I think we can win this hand 99.9% of the time by overbetting this river. So we go 620, and he actually says here,
I got 10-9. I'm gonna call 600.
feeling a little bit more dialed in here after the break. Hopefully we can keep this rolling. Next hand is a small pot, but I think it is very, very interesting. One of the most interesting hands of the session, strategy-wise. So let's talk about it. The $10 straddle is on, as discussed in a previous few vlogs. I'm just opening any 2 on the button with 3 very passive recreational players in the blind. You see, I don't even look at my cards here. I just open 2 $40. The middle blind is going to call, and the flop comes ace-3-8. And look, we've got 9-4 offsuit, so not the best hand. My MO on these ace high, super dry, super static boards where players aren't going to raise off their strong shit and call with their weak shit, I'm going to play an overbet or check strategy here on the flop. Use kind of my value hands to overbet and maybe some blocker type bluffs, blocking them having 2 pair or bottom set or something like that. Not a big fan of blockers in live play, but this is one of the points where I think it actually does matter, where they're not going to fast play their strong stuff. So we check this back. Turn is a 6 of hearts. Now when he checks it over in this particular spot, I think he is weighted quite a bit towards both air and showdown value. Showdown value is going to call 1 bet no matter what size we make it here, but we want to make sure he's still incentivized maybe to raise off some of his hands like sets or 2 pair that may trap a little bit here on such a static and dry board. So we go $80 targeting his showdown value and kind of incentivizing him to raise off his good stuff. He's going to call. River's now a 6 of spades. We don't like this card because now an ace is going to be very, very hard to get off a chop. And thinking about this river, if I got here with a hand like ace king or something like that, would be hard to do because I just bet flop. But if we did have have a hand like ace king here? Well, I'd be betting very, very big here. I'd probably be betting like 350 or 400 to target an ace on this river. I don't think an ace is folding for less than 400 here. And the problem is if we lay down the big boy bazooka size, 500, 600, whatever, we could just run into trips, right? We could just run into very strong hands that are just never folding. If he flipped over 7-6 here, I probably wouldn't be going all in to try to get him to fold 7-6. I just don't think that hand is ever folding. So I actually go pretty small in this river. I go 125. I'm just trying to get 8x to fold. I'm trying to get pocket 7s to fold. And now on this river, I ask him what he has, and here's what happens.
I got ace 9.
After a little bit of thinking, he's finally going to find the fold. I very, very, very highly doubt he had an ace here. I think he probably just had a hand like 8x, maybe a hand like pocket 5, something like that. But I am super happy with the execution in this hand and the kind of targeted bet size on the river to just get some of that weak stuff to fold and still be super efficient against his trips and ace-x that probably just is never folding. All right, next hand here, we've got a double board PLO bomb pot, 6 players in, 150 bucks out there, 25 ante per player. We look down at king, queen, jack, 4. Board number 1 comes king 8-10, so we've got top pair and an open in straight draw. Board number 2 comes queen jack 5, so we got top 2. So pretty good on both boards for us. Not bad at all. Checks over to us, and as is my MO when I'm not in late position in these bomb pots, I'm just checking my entire range to see what happens. So we check. The button goes 150 here. Now the low jack is going to call. Raising here is just not all that appealing to me. Our 2 pair on bottom is probably good at some frequency, right? But the board is so wet and dynamic, 2 pair is not likely to be good by the river unless we pair up. And on top board, really all we've got is top pair. So if we get the money in 3 ways here, we could just be getting chopped by like a combo draw on bottom that gets there and then like a set on top. We could just be in bad shape if we just pile in the money here. And people don't like to fold in these games. They just hate folding in these double board games. So I'm just gonna call, try to realize, see what happens on the turn. We're going 3 ways to the turn, which is a 10 up top. So now that board is paired. Our straight draw is probably dead. And now an ace down below, which downgrades our 2 pair. So we're probably just done with this. We check it over, but the button checks it back. Now we're going to a river, which is a king up top. So now we have trips and an innocuous 3 of clubs down below. And at this point, we think it's probably likely that we have the best hand up top now with trip kings. If the button did have a boat up top, he would probably just keep betting on the turn, I would assume, at some frequency. And so at this point, we are going to elect to semi-bluff here and just try to fold out equity on the bottom board here and try to get both of these players to fold. So we go 600, but the button is going to snap call here. And now the low jack is going to think it over and he's going to call as well. Uh-oh. The button has king 8, jack deuce, so he has a boat up top, so we lose that one. And the low jack has 5-5 3-10. So he has absolutely nothing going on up top, but has bottom set on the bottom board, makes a hero call, and we actually get scooped here. So probably a little blunder on this river, just assuming we had the best hand up top, but we do not have the best hand on either. Next hand here, I was really put in the blender on this hand. I think this one's super interesting. Cutoff goes 25, the button in the small blind call. We're coming along in the big blind with 9-6 of diamonds. Flop is 4-5-3. And we're gonna check it over to the pre-flop razor here, and it's actually going to check through. So now we know that the cutoff and button probably don't have very strong hands here. The turn is a 7. It checks to us, so we now have a straight. We're gonna go 100 here. I think it could be possible that either the cutoff or button could have a flush draw, the small blind could have a set or 2 pair. So we're gonna go relatively big here, 100. I think I could probably just go 150 here. I don't think any of those hands I mentioned are folding, but only the cutoff is going to call. So I think he's just gonna have a lot of heart flush draws here, pretty much exclusively. We're going to a river, which is a 4. And now at this point, my plan is I could check it over and let him bluff with all this ace-x of hearts and then go for the bluff catch here. But actually, I think if we just check it over to them, they sometimes just check back, figuring incorrectly. They've got showdown value. They just give up with whatever in position with their ace-x of hearts or whatever. But I think if we go really, really small here, it's actually like kind of insulting. I think we can get players to spaz quite a bit here. If we just go very, very small, like like 10% pot or something. So that is the plan here. Try to get him to spaz with his heart draws. I go $40 and now he makes it $340. And this is a bit perplexing to me because I was planning to just snap call here. But usually when you see guys bluffing, usually they'll just go 120 or 160 or even 200 here. But this is a big raise. I'm not good at math, but this looks like a little bit under 9x to me. This is a massive raise size. The plan was to bet small and get him to spaz, and spaz he did. So I guess reluctantly we put in the call, and look at that. He shows us 7-7. So he actually checked back pocket sevens on the flop, and then he spikes top set on the turn, gets there, runner, full house on the river. And we get max owned here by going for the fancy pants block bet river to induce a spaz line. The button is just pre-folding. He's just letting me know what he's going to do. We see here he's like ready to fold his cards. So I'm just going to open any two here in the cutoff. We have 4-5 offsuit here, and maybe not the best decision because the small blind, the middle blind, and the straddle are going to call. So we're going 4 ways, which is an absolute garbage hand. And as you can see here, the small blind in this hand was the player who was formerly on our right, our sticky, trappy, passive friend. Flop comes ace-9-6, nothing going on for us. We check it back, it checks through. Turn is a 6, it checks to us again. Once again, we're just gonna check it back, check through, see what they do on the river. It checks to us on the river. Well, we've got some devious intentions. The river is now a 9, so the board is double paired. We would assume that at a pretty decent frequency, if one of these players had an ace, they would just come out and bet the turn. I think we could just sell the story to these guys that we have a 9 a lot, because they would check back the flop with a 9. They would check back the turn with a 9. And now when it comes to us on the river, well, they would probably get greedy with a 9 here. So I think we could just sell the story. Even if one of these players does have an ace, I think we could just get all the folds here. So pot being 180, we go 415 on this river and just trying to get the big boy folds. And look at this, the small blind is actually going to snappity snap call. We hate to see it. The other two players are going to get out of the way. We proudly flip over our 5 high and say we flopped it, and the small blind is going to show ace deuce off. So I'm not really sure what the point of this overbet on the river was. We thought we could get all the ace X to fold. He calls us with the worst ace. And just a lesson in calibration here for us, and just how sticky, how trappy, how passive this particular player is. Going for the overbet on this river is probably just punting. Me continuing to play terrible in this session, if there's one overarching theme of this, you got it right there. All right, next hand here, another PLO double board bomb pot. This time 8 players in, 25 a person, so $200 out there. We have 9, 6, 5, 10 with a couple of hearts. Board 1 comes 7, 8 queens. We've got a big wrap on board number 1, and board 2 comes 5, 9 ace with a couple of diamonds. So we got bottom 2 pair on board 2 and a big wrap on board 1. So pretty good for us. Under the gun comes out and bets 200. And when under the gun comes out and leads out into 7 players, this is probably just going to be a hand like queens or aces, specifically a hand like that. So we just don't have fold equity here, I believe. We're just going to call here and try to realize. And now the button is going to make it 1,000 here. He is going to pot it, and surprisingly, under the gun gets out of the way. So what do we know here? We're only about 1150 effective here, so an additional 150 on top of the button's 1K. You know, worst case scenario for us, he's got a hand like pocket aces. Well, we've got a ton of equity on the other board, clean outs to make our wrap. And if he does have a hand like pocket queens, well, we're in pretty good shape because we've got 9-5 on the bottom board, we've got 2 pair, and we've got a big wrap on the board that he has a set. So I think like we're just doing pretty much fine, like heads up against anybody. If this went 3 ways, I would not be feeling great, but heads up, like we got to be in good shape on one of these boards. So we put in the money, the button calls, of course. Top board comes a 6, so now we have a straight. We have the nuts on the top board. Bottom board comes a 10. Now the river is an 8 up top and a 6 down below. So unfortunately the top board pairs. We show our hand, and he has queen, queen, jack, 10. So he had nothing on the bottom board, but he had top set with a gut shot on the top board. So his queens hold up when the board pairs up on the river on the top board, and we take the bottom board with 2 pair, and we chop this one up. Next hand here, one more double board PLO hand, and then we'll get back to the normal poker, I promise. $200 in there, 8 people in the pot. We've got ace, king, queen, 8 with a couple of hearts. Board number 1 is 5, queen, 7, so top pair. Board number 2 is king, 7, 10. So we have top pair and a gutter there. Top pair on both boards. Not the strongest hand in double board, but not the worst hand either. We are going to check here, and if there's a bunch of action behind us, obviously we're just done with this. But now the middle position player to our left bets 120, which is less than the size of the pot. The button is going to call, and we've got top pair on each board. We've got some backdoors here, so we're gonna come along as well. The turn now is a 3 up top, so 5, queen, 7, 3, and an 8 below. So now we actually have 2 paired down below, but still, there's straights, there's all types of stuff going. So again, if there's a lot of heavy action behind us, we are just done with this. We check it over, MP checks back, and now the button checks as well, so it checks through. Now the river is a 9 up top and an 8 down below, so our king 8 down below actually makes us a full house now on that board. And on the top board, we still have top pair. Now there's 3 players in there. In my opinion, we've got this bottom board on lockdown with king 8. We have the best hand here. If someone had a better hand on the bottom board, we would have known on the flop or the turn. So we are going to come out and bluff here and try to fold out chops and try to get both of these players to fold if possible. We go 560 on this river. Unfortunately, EP calls, button gets out of the way, and EP has a ridiculous hand. He has queen, 7, deuce, 4. So he just has middle pair on the bottom board, and he has 2 pair, not even top 2 pair on the top board, but he makes a hero call. Like I said, people don't like to fold in these things. You just kind of outhand them and just kind of win the money off people who don't really understand how equity shift in PLO, people who will just kind of get the money in with the nuts, the naked nuts on one board and nothing going on the other board. That's how you make money in these things, not by bluffing. But we are going to chop this one up. All right, next hand here. Not sure if I'm in love with the way I played this one. Let's talk about it. 5, 5, 10, the straddle is on. Hijack makes it 30, cutoff calls. We squeeze to 150 on the button with ace, king offsuit. The hijack folds, and now the cutoff is going to put in the double call here. So once again, when players double flat, it's going to be a lot of hands like pocket pairs, ace X suited, and suited broadways. And the flop comes 7, 3, 3. He checks it over. We go 125, 1/3 pot. He calls. Turn is now a king of hearts. I get too caught up in this vortex of, oh, I think this guy double flatted. He has too many pocket pairs. Pocket pairs are never going to call here. And so I actually check it back, just planning to go for 2 streets, figuring I'm never getting 3. But I think that's a mistake. And I'm not sure if we ever get 3, but if we're never getting bluff raised off our equity and he's never bluffing himself on rivers, he's never turning pairs into a bluff, checking back just doesn't make any sense, right? It just doesn't make any sense. We may as well go for 3. We check it back. River is a deuce of hearts. He checks it over, and as was the plan from the turn, we're gonna go very small here, try to get looked up by a hand like pocket 9s or something like that. So he checks, we go 200, and then he is thinking, and we start talking.
What do you have?
Not much.
9s.
Deal card.
He puts in the call, we show ace king, and we are good. Don't love the way I played the turn, but at least I was not stupid enough to go too big on the river. Here we go. Big pot alert. This is gonna be the last hand of the session, and this one is a monster. The $10 straddle is on, folds to us in the small blind. We make it 50 with pocket 4s. The middle blind, who seems to be kind of a trying recreational player, maybe playing for profit, makes it 175. And we are going to call here with our pocket pair of 4s. The flop comes 8, Jack, Jack with a couple of hearts. We check it over. He goes 150 into 360. So under half pot here, about 40%. And in general, I think a lot of players at this level are just going to be stabbing once with hands like ace, king, ace, queen, king, queen suited, stuff like that. And then they'll just kind of give up. So I'm going to call one time and make him put in the double barrel. And look at that sweet baby there. The turn is a 4. So we went from hoping that he had ace, king to hoping that he has a hand like pocket aces or pocket kings. We check, and he goes 300 now, and I'm eyeing his stack. He's only got about 400 behind after he puts in this 300. So just not much behind. At this point, I just don't think he's bluffing ever. And he's gonna be hard pressed to fold an overpair now for only an additional 400. We're out of position. We wanna make sure just the money goes in here. He's never folding for 400 more. So we put in the money, we jam for 700 effective. He shrug calls. River is a deuce of hearts. We flip over our hand, we're good. And he shows pocket kings. Obviously he had kings or aces or maybe even queens here. And we get the very lucky card on the turn, win a nice little $2,000 pot and some change, and a very, very, very nice last hand of the session.
Well, the run gun had to stop at some time or another. Did not win over $3,000 again tonight. A little bit frustrated with my execution early on in the session. I think I made a couple little blunders that I usually don't make. Maybe just my focus was a little off. Running good the last few sessions, maybe not as dialed in as I should be, but I think I sharpened up later in the session and ended up booking a small W, won about 200 and some change, played about 8 hours or so. So we are still on pace and the hours are getting there. We're creeping up on 100 hours. Marco will put the overall results over here somewhere. Thank you, Marco. All right, we'll see you guys next time.